Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the October 5th, 2020 Clovis City Council meeting. Given the current shelter-in-place order covering the state of California and the social distancing guidelines issued by federal, state, and local authorities, the city is implementing changes to participate in council meetings. The council chambers will be open to the public, but we will implement social distancing policies and will limit the number of people who may be in the council chambers. The meeting will be webcast and accessible at the link listed on the board. Members of the public are encouraged to participate in meetings by accessing the webcast at the link on the screen, providing written comment at the same website, participating by phone, or coming to the City Council chamber meeting in person. We are practicing social distancing, can only accommodate a maximum of 16 people at one time. I will call the meeting to order, and I will ask Emma Hannon to lead us in the flag salute. Emma.
Ready, salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Emma. And I'm going to start a new tradition. This is a flag salute challenge coin. It's the words of the flag salute. And we're going to give that to all the children that come in here and help us out. Thank you so much. If the clerk will call roll, please.
Councilmember Ashbeck.
Here.
Councilmember Flores.
Here.
Councilmember Moanatua.
Here.
Councilmember Whalen.
Here.
Mayor Bessinger.
Here. We come to the presentation and proclamations portion of the meeting. The first is a presentation of a proclamation condemning racism, discrimination, bigotry, bias, and hate speech in our community. And we're going to handle this resolution a little bit differently, or this proclamation. We're each going to read into the record portions of this because as a group, it's important that our voices be heard along with the voices of every other citizen of Clovis who condemns this. So I will start. City of Clovis Proclamation condemning racism, discrimination, bigotry, bias, and hate speech in our community. Whereas on Saturday, September 26, 2020, events occurred in this community that neither represent our values nor reflect the views of those who live here. Through the lens of that event and the events occurring around the country, we hereby adopt this resolution to publicly condemn bias and hate in all forms and to reaffirm our community values of respect, inclusivity, civility, and equity for all, and urge every organization in our community to stand with us.
And whereas the City of Clovis's vision statement is a city that is committed to the Clovis community family, their needs, their values, and a quality way of life for all, reflecting that commitment in how it develops and in the activities it undertakes. The City of Clovis's commitment to a quality way of life for all means everyone who lives in, works in, does business in, or visits Clovis regardless of race or ethnicity.
Whereas our community was founded by families with traditions from around the world, alongside of the indigenous people native to this region, early Clovis High School class photos remind us of the diversity on which this community was built. And
whereas racism causes discrimination and disparate outcomes in housing, education, employment, criminal justice, health, and leads to economic hardships, and racism, bias, and hate have no place in our society or in our community, we must protect the constitutional rights of everyone in our community and foster a community that is welcoming to all people regardless of race, ethnicity, religion, or sexual orientation. And
Whereas we recognize that a resolution or a single action in and of itself will not change the community, but rather that we are all responsible with individually and collectively, both individually and collectively, for creating and fostering an anti-racist and unbiased community in our words and actions, and that we must actively acknowledge and stand up against bias and discrimination of any kind.
Now, therefore, be it resolved by the City Council of the City of Clovis on behalf of the citizens of Clovis as follows. Did I read the rest of that? Drew?
Was it?
Oh, I didn't know. Sorry.
Excuse me. One, the City of Clovis, City government of Clovis, along with the citizens of our community, have a shared value that all men and women are created equal, and we will defend anyone who is mistreated because of their race, ethnicity, sexual preference, religion, and any other reason. And
Number 2, the City of Clovis strongly condemns all forms of racism, discrimination, bigotry, bias, and hate speech in our community. And
3, the City of Clovis stands steadfast in our commitment to foster an inclusive civil environment where everyone in our community is treated with dignity and respect.
In witness thereof, I hereunto set my hand and cause the official seal of the City of Clovis to be affixed this 5th day of October 2020 to this proclamation. We're going to ask staff to find a suitable place for a framed copy of this to go up either in these chambers or in City Hall, because these are foundational values that every community should have, and I believe does have. But we need to continually remember that sometimes people fail, and we need to be there to help them. We need to stand up for people who are being victimized every single time. I would invite any member of council to make a comment.
Thank you for the chance to be a part of this resolution. I think as leaders, we have the privilege and the obligation of calling out racism when we see it. And it's not enough to call it out, but it's a place to start. So I salute my colleagues for taking this step. I also would encourage any organization in our community to join with us in adopting this resolution. Schools, chamber, businesses, organizations, families, neighborhoods. What we saw in Clovis on September 26th is not acceptable under any circumstances, and it will not be tolerated. And as leaders, we have the privilege and obligation to say it is not okay in our community. So I'm just really honored and grateful that we did this today. So thanks.
Jose.
life is hard. No one promises a rose garden, but it's hard to go through life. And there are circumstances that we as individuals can change. But sometimes, I mean, not sometimes, we're born with attributes that we didn't have any say-so in it. We're born with attributes that were God-given, and no one should judge us by those attributes. We should all be embraced by them, and because we're all God's children. And so I think as Americans, we should all respect each other, because we can't change our gender. We can't change the color of our skin. We can't change where we come from. But we can make a difference as individuals to make this nation a stronger nation. So only together can we do that.
Bond.
First of all, I just want to thank Mayor for your leadership during this time. I thank the rest of my colleagues for being united in taking this position. I also have to thank our staff and our departments, whichever, whether it's from the business sector, getting businesses to rally together, or from our PD, taking care of the legal aspects of it, to the quick and swift response is something in which communities can really feel like we stand behind them when they are discriminated against. And I'm proud of our community, the way it has responded through reading comments on social media posts from those that have actually reached out to Chanel and her family, and even those who have contacted the city on how we have responded. And I do want to say to those who have been discriminated against and not heard, who feel like they can't come forward, that this is a city in which if you come forward, we will stand with you, we will stand up and protect you, and we will not tolerate it from us on the council to the staff, to the community as a whole. So I wanted to encourage anyone and everyone who still feels like they don't have a voice, that they have a voice along with the 5 of us in the entire community.
Bob?
I probably bore people with some of my stories that my mom shares with me, but I'll share one again. When she lived in Clovis, she was poor. She was ended up being a foster kid for a while. It wasn't a particularly easy life, and it was not uncommon back then for people to look down on citizens of the city of Clovis. I never want anybody to feel like my mom or others who have been here in the city of Clovis have felt in the past. We are not people that tear others down. We are people who build people up. And the response of this community has been reassuring. I think that so many of us were shocked by it. We responded the only way that we could, and that was by our voice, by showing Chanel as much love as we could. The way that it manifested itself was very creative in many respects, and I'm just really thankful that I belong to a council who puts this as a priority, city staff that has this as a priority, and a community which will make sure that we keep it a priority. So thanks so much, Drew, for giving us the opportunity to comment on this.
Thank you, Bob. And I'd like to publicly acknowledge Lynn for her leadership on this. This was her idea. I don't have great moments sometimes. I wish I had thought of it first. And one of the things that, every thundercloud has a silver lining. The outreach and the outpouring of compassion and kindness really spoke to the community that we are, that we always knew we were. And sometimes when there are moments of tragedy is when people step up and show you who they are. Andy, could you put up we had the young lady, Emma, who led the flag salute tonight. We had some people in their own way go out and tell people and this community and Chanel what it means to be in Clovis and have the arms put around you. This is very touching to see this. And there were other people who were involved who didn't come tonight because they know that, and I know that Emma's mom struggled with this too. When you do acts of kindness, you don't want to put the light on you because then it potentially is no longer an act of kindness. That was one of the things that my mother taught me. When you give money, when you give your time, you don't talk about what you did. There's a parable in the Bible that talks about a very rich man, and he gave a lot of money in the church, and he did it in a very ostentatious way. And a young woman gave everything she had, and she was told, your offering was the best because you gave it without expectation of any kind of adulation or a pat on the back. And I think that's what Clovis is at its heart. We step up for each other. I do have some T-shirts for our young friends here, if they would like a T-shirt. And if you would like to say anything, or any member of the public would like to speak about this publicly, I would invite you to come up and say it, but you are obviously under no obligation. But I would appreciate if you guys would come up and grab a T-shirt from us. Maybe we can do one of those little league high five things, or a simulated one. Air high five. That's right, air high five. Air high five. Good job. Air high five. Elbow. There you go. That's a man. Thank you. Any other member of the public wish to address the council on this item? Yes.
My name is Chanel Walkner, and I'm the owner of Just My Essentials. And I truly wasn't going to speak, but Mayor, the last thing that you said about giving and not having expectations, and why some people didn't want to be here for that reason, is the reason I'm standing here. I'm from New York City, so New York City is a really small island with like 11 million people. So it's very crowded, and there's no such thing as social distancing in New York City, if you will, with regards to just discrimination or race. Just no room. And so it's not that I don't know that it exists. I know that it exists. I'm 58 years old. This surprised me, but what has surprised me more is all of the people that have rallied around me. Everybody, every flower, every card, every hug, every tear. I mean, I had men that were taller than my husband coming and crying in my arms, and I was so more concerned about them than I was myself. I realized that I wasn't just I'm hoping, and I think that I'm right in my heart, that I wasn't seen as a victim. I was seen as part of this community, that Clovis decided this isn't right and this isn't supposed to happen here. And I would always tell people when I would go somewhere with my husband and they would ask where we're from, and he would say California, and I would say, nope, I'm from New York. I live in California, you know. And that was it. I didn't put down roots, you know, anywhere. And so for the first time at this age, I have roots. I'm putting down roots, and my roots are in Clovis, California, and I'm so proud and humbled for that. I want everyone just to know that this incident doesn't define me. This incident will not stop me. This incident isn't right, but I'm okay. And I'm stronger because I realize, and I'll kind of sidebar that for a second, I'm a big, giant Game of Thrones fan. And in the scene, there was one scene when the king asked his wife, he said, which is stronger? And she said, the five, pardon me. And he said, no, the one. And this is how we are. We are all one. So as strong as everybody is showing that we are, and I'm part of that I'm so blessed, I'm so humbled, I'm so grateful, and I'm in awe every day. When I drove up and saw this from Dry Creek, Emma, ooh, girl, I made that's the back page of my Facebook page. And I was wondering if there was any way that it never had to go away. I asked Bob Boylan, I said, how can we make this stay forever? Because it makes me feel warm, and it makes me feel safe, and it shows me love, and I just so much appreciate it. And I am, again, grateful and humbled. And I just want Clovis, my gift, and I'm sorry, but it's the kind of gift that I need to give, is that I truly want to give back by having a block party when I do my reopening, just so I can say thank you to Clovis for welcoming me into the community, not so much for the support of my store, but just welcoming me into this community. And I so appreciate being a resident of this community. Thank you so much.
for now. I have a t-shirt for you. I thought I saw one other member of the public who wanted to speak to this. Yes, please.
I'd like to say thank you for what you guys are doing. I was appalled when I saw what had happened to this woman. Your police department is discriminatory. I'm a biker in this community. My son is now riding bikes. And they have come to my house and flat out told me, your son's a biker. No, my son isn't. My son rides a bike. I ride a bike. I work in this community. I pay my taxes in this community. And it's gotten to a point of now my son has to deal with discriminatory from your police department. It's not the first time. I've been here 8 years. I'm not perfect, by no means. Thank you for doing what you're doing, but let's also let you guys know, as a biker in this community, I'm not the only one. They're being discriminatory towards us too. That's all I gotta say. Thank you.
Thanks, sir. Any other member of the public wish to address council on this particular item? Seeing none, we'll go to item 2, which is a presentation, proclamation, presentation and update on the Community Development Block Grant Funded Senior Meal Program. Right.
Thank you. All right, good evening, everyone. We're doing a little bit of a shuffle right now. I think we're all in here. All right, well, good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members. I'm Amy Hans, the General Services Manager for the City of Clovis, and I oversee the Senior Center. And we're here tonight to give you an update on our Senior Meal Delivery Program. And we have some important folks with us, and I'll tell you a little bit more about them as we go through this. The Senior Meal Delivery Program began way back on May 18th. It feels like 5 years ago, but it really was just 6 months ago. And using CDBG grant funds, we were trying to figure out a way that we could feed our seniors. This program has been a big success, thanks to a lot of the people that are here in this room. I just want to say thanks to several city divisions, including Community Development, Finance Department, Recreation, Public Affairs, and Senior Services. And I would be remiss if I didn't call out and recognize Maiku Yang. She's right back here. She is the Senior Center Recreation Specialist. We know her in the building as the Department of Fun, and she really took this program and made it soar. This program has benefited our local seniors. To date, we've served over 15,000 meals to our seniors. It's once a week, and they really look forward to it. By the end of this program, we're going to have over 3,500 hours of volunteer service, and we've worked with 52 restaurants here in our community. So it's been a win-win-win. Our primary goal was to make sure that our seniors got food, but we were also able to help out some of our local restaurants and also provide a very important service, which is allowing our community to volunteer in a time it's pretty hard to find volunteer opportunities. Our city is known for its generosity and sense of community, and our volunteers work through our incredible summer heat delivering these meals at noon every day. So we really appreciate their help. It sure would have been a lot harder if we didn't have them helping us on our team. We do have some representatives of our volunteer groups here with us. With us tonight from the Clovis Chamber of Commerce, Greg Newman and Kurt Seavey. From Old Town Clovis Kiwanis, Carol Doji and Judy Mitchell. They're right around here. And then from Gateway Church, Richard Herring. These are just representatives of some of the community groups that came out and really helped us out. We do have a video, so if Andy wants to play that.
I have been called a few nicknames from our seniors that I go out to. They call me the Mule Lady. And so I go out there and they know that I'm coming and they wait out there for me. Some of them, they leave their door open for me, and so they hear my cart rolling up down the sidewalk. So each day we serve about 200 or 300 meals. The meals are delivered to our senior communities. They are delivered out to either mobile home parks or seniors that live in multi-family complex.
Thank you. God bless you.
You're welcome. So my morning routine starts with communicating with the staff, giving them an assigned location. I let them know which restaurant to go to, how many meals, and at what time. So we get to the restaurant, we roll in with our red cart, and we're greeted by the restaurant. The staff help us load the meals onto the cart, and then we load them into the vehicles. Then we head onto our assigned location. Once we're there, we have either a dozen or half a dozen of community volunteers that help us distribute the meals. The community volunteers are either through nonprofit organizations or community members who just want to help out the community.
Some of these people, they may be the only visitor they see this week. You know, and you saw them. Some of them look forward to it. They're, you know, I don't know if they're hungry or they just happen to have somebody say hi to them. You know, that they're not forgotten.
We have received a lot of positive feedback from our recipients that are receiving the meals. A lot of appreciation. They're grateful for the meals. This is the day out the whole week that they wait for. They've let us know. They've written us notes. We receive greeting cards from them that are sent to the office, that are given to us when we hand them the meals. To our volunteers and our local restaurants, thank you for making this program so special for our local seniors here in the city of Clovis. We couldn't have done it without you.
And thanks to Chad McCollum for helping us with that video. It really sums up how great this program was, and it really did take a lot of people to make it work. I don't know if any of our volunteers would maybe like to come up and speak just very briefly. Would you like to come up? Yeah.
Good evening, council members. When I heard that the city received this grant money and was really looking for a way to give it back to the community, and we heard about the senior meal program, you know, it didn't take me 2 seconds to put a team together and want to volunteer. So we called Shauna, and Shauna said, let us know when and where, and we'll be there. So on behalf of the Clovis Chamber and our volunteers, it's not only a sense of duty to our community and giving back, but it's become very personal to us. You know, we look forward to it. It's time that our team really enjoys. It's time that they've volunteered and taken away from their jobs to give back. But the look on the recipients' faces, and like the gentleman said in the video, you know, they're waiting for us. They can't wait to see what we're bringing them that day. They're very appreciative, and can't say enough about the city of Clovis and their organization. They're on time. The food's well, you know, the recipients are well labeled. It's very well organized, and we're just really happy to be a part of it.
Thank you, Greg.
We do have some of the restaurateurs here, and Sean Miller, if you can come on up and talk about them.
One of the clearly the greatest byproducts of this program was that we were able to work with the restaurants that just were not making any money. Their doors were completely closed. But it wasn't just restaurants. We also had some other food providers. We had Classic Catering that was unable to do anything for months and months. So we were really, really happy to partner with them. And you know, who does a better job of, you know, making a whole bunch of food at one time? So they did a good job. But I brought a few of the restaurateurs and some of the food providers just to say hi and just to recognize them. But this is by no means, you know, all of them. They would pack this even without the social distancing, you know, if they were here. Let's see, where shall we start? So Sammy, where are you? Sammy from Sashimi Express is just a great restaurateur. We had a lot of fun working with him. Ninfa Garcia, old Clovis business, El Pueblito, best menudo in town, by the way. And it was very, very nice getting to know you through this process, both of you. Heidi and her crew from Classic Catering, Janess, did a bang-up job of making sure that food was, as a matter of fact, they're so good at this, they're better than us, and so they would give us special stuff to transport the food, and just say, just bring it back, you guys know what you're doing. So that was a lot of fun working with your whole crew there. And then Jason Quigley owns the Valley Food Dude. He is the Valley Food Dude. And he has a food delivery business where a couple times a week, he has a route or customers that he delivers prepared food to. And again, very, very good at doing this kind of thing and did a very, very good job. Anyone want to say anything real quick? Anything? Did you bring samples? Anyone? Okay. Did you bring cards? So thank you very much for allowing us to do this program. It was just it was a wonderful way to spend our summer.
Thanks, Sean. I'd invite any member of council who would like to say something about this wonderful program. Bong.
You know, we have a reputation of being one of the best senior centers in the valley, and I think when you do work like this, it just, you know, solidifies that reputation. So thank you, Amy, Shauna, even to Sean, you guys helping out. You know, a community that honors its elders really instills, you know, the beliefs, the characters, the history of an area. And for us to feed 763 of them, and, you know, there's that true human element that the businesses, along with the staff, along with the people, the volunteers, you know, we got church involved. We didn't forget. We still remember them. And I know that they look forward to it, because especially during COVID, when they were the most vulnerable, even when they're, you know, like even in my family, you don't go visit the elders as much, and during this time for you to keep seeing them every week. Thank you for just putting that human touch. And so congratulations, my crew, for doing a great job. And so I just want to, you know, really thank you for making Clovis really like a true family.
Lynn.
I think just ditto. Really, it's such a great story. I think we should adjourn the meeting right now, because it's probably only going to go downhill from here. I say this all the time, so my colleagues will be bored with this, but one of my favorite sayings is, plant a tree under which you will never sit. So you fed people that you didn't know. You may never, I'm going to cry, you can't tell. You may never see them again, but you brought them joy in that moment, and that really is the heart of this community. So thanks for planting all kinds of trees that you will never know what good came out of that. So really remarkable work, really wonderful work.
Bob.
So I'm guilty of getting wrapped up in the busyness of a day or the urgency of the item that happens to be in front of me at the moment. And I just am thankful that there are people who see beyond themselves, and they are willing, and I would say even more than just willing, really have a sense of kindness, a readiness to do good in our community. And you have all reminded me of that, and I'm thankful for the reminder. And I'm looking forward to maybe seeing what else creative the city of Clovis can come up with to reach out to folks who really aren't able to get to the senior center anymore, aren't able to gather with their families or their friends during this time. So anyway, thanks to all of you. Thanks to the city staff as well for making this come together.
Jose.
Every year, we're reminded at our volunteer dinner that we couldn't possibly, as a city, do the things we do without all the help we get from the volunteers. So thank you. And this pandemic has really, really, really exposed the people who really have huge hearts, because the most vulnerable, as Long has said, are our elders. They're the ones that are taking the brunt of this pandemic, and they need the help. And so you got a straight line of heaven. Thank you.
I'd like to join my colleagues. I'm very, very proud of our staff for handling this program and making sure that over 700 of our seniors not only got fed, they had social contact. For a lot of our seniors, because they're medically vulnerable, they weren't seeing their grandchildren, they weren't seeing their children, and a lot of them were very lonely. And just looking at the videos, they were running to the door so that they could have a 2-minute conversation. And this is probably a good opportunity for us to make sure that we reach out to the people in our lives that sometimes we get busy and we don't remember. I'm going to violate the rule I just talked about and talk about something I did yesterday. I have a very good friend of mine who's a German national. She moved to the United States in the 1950s. Boy, she'd kill me if she was here now. And when I was promoted to captain in these chambers, her sister was visiting from Germany. And in 2012, my wife and I went to northern Germany, and our friend Uta was visiting her sister. We stayed with her, and she's a very close friend of ours. And yesterday morning, I said to my wife, because it's Oktoberfest, I said to my wife, we should give Uta a call and find out if she's had schnitzel yet. And we called up, and she said, I would love to get some schnitzel. And I won't put a plug in for my son's restaurant, but they have schnitzel. And I brought her schnitzel, a roll, and a beer, and I took it over to her. She called me later that evening, and she said, you have no idea how low I felt this morning. This really, really was important. So I think that we should all make that opportunity. Sometimes you got to make it happen and just call, because a lot of people aren't going to call you and ask for things. I know that's not how I was raised either. You don't ask for help, but hopefully when you have people who need it, you can give it to them and make their day. Does any member of the public wish to address the council on this presentation? Yes, ma'am. Thank you. But just what Jose said earlier, at our volunteer banquet each year, when we look at what the volunteers in this community do for us as a community, as a city government, we would be in deep trouble if we did not have the loving and committed people in this city. Any other member of the public wish to address the council on this item? Seeing none, we will go to F. Wow, if all of our council meetings could be this uplifting. We should just quit now while we're ahead. That's right. Now we come to the public comments portion of this meeting. This is an opportunity for members of the public to address the City Council on any matter within the City Council's jurisdiction that is not listed on the agenda. In order for everyone to be heard, please limit your comments to 5 minutes or less, or 10 minutes per topic. Anyone wishing to be placed on the agenda for a specific topic should contact the City Manager's office and submit correspondence at least 10 days before the desired date of appearance. Does anyone inside chambers wish to address the council on any item that is not on the agenda? Seeing none, we have anybody online?
No.
Mr. Clerk, do we have any public comments via email?
None.
Okay, I will close public comments. In regards to ordinances and resolutions, with respect to the approval of resolutions and ordinances, the reading of the title shall be deemed a motion to waive a reading of the complete resolution or ordinance, and unless there is a request by a council member that the resolution or ordinance be read in full, further reading of the resolution or ordinance shall be deemed waived by the unanimous consent of the council. Come to the consent calendar. These are items considered routine in nature are placed upon the consent calendar. They will all be considered and voted upon in one vote as one item unless a council member requests individual consideration. A council member's vote in favor of the consent calendar is considered and recorded as a separate affirmative vote in favor of each action listed. Motions in favor of adoption of the consent calendar are deemed to include a motion to waive the reading of any ordinance or resolution on the consent calendar. For adoption of ordinances, only those that have received a unanimous vote upon introduction are considered consent items. Does any member of the council wish to have an item on the consent calendar pulled for discussion? Seeing none, does any member of the public present in chambers wish to have an item on the consent calendar pulled for discussion? Seeing none, do we have anybody online?
None.
And did we receive any, Mr. Clerk, did we receive anything?
None.
Okay, I will come back to council for a,
I'll move for approval.
have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Now we come to public hearings. Public hearing is an open consideration within a regular or special meeting of the City Council for which special notice has been given and may be required. When a public hearing is continued, noticing of the adjourned item is required as per Government Code 54955.1. Item 12, consider approval of a resolution amending the city's master administrative fee schedule to eliminate Clovis transit fares. Amy Hans.
Back again. Well, good evening again, Mr. Mayor and council members. Tonight, I'm here regarding a recommendation by staff. I tried to look here. Okay. For the city to amend the master administrative fee schedule and eliminate transit fares for stage line and roundup bus service. Our staff periodically evaluates transit fares, and after taking stock and considering the current state of public transit, we are now recommending the elimination of transit fares. Before we get into this, I'd like to do a quick overview of transit funding. It's my favorite subject. I know you all like it as much as I do. The source of transit funding primarily for Clovis Transit is through the TDA, which is the Transit Development Act. Other sources include Measure C, our passenger fares, advertising, trolley rentals, and a variety of grants that we use for specific projects. The complication with TDA, even though it's the majority of where we get our funding, is that it does require a farebox recovery ratio of 10% on our roundup bus service and 20% on stage line. Our farebox recovery rate currently falls, or it did before the pandemic, between 2 and 4% of operating costs, below the TDA requirement. And we use a portion of our Measure C allocation to close the gap between what we take in from passenger fares and what's required by the TDA. If we didn't meet our Farebox recovery ratio, our allocation would be slowly but very surely reduced year over year. Over the past few years, we've used amounts of Measure C between $435,000 to $681,000 per year. Currently, the city charges $1.25 per passenger on stage line and a range between $1.25 and $2.75 on roundup, depending upon the destination. Without Measure C to make up that gap, a ride on stage line would probably be around $9 to try and make our recovery ratio. So we really rely on Measure C. Taking a look at the current state of transit, I'm going to go through some bullet points, so stop me wherever we need to stop. But we are currently under a 0 Farebox recovery ratio, thanks to the California legislature. They passed AB 90 in June, and due to the pandemic, all bus operators are not able to meet their recovery ratio. So for fiscal year 1920 and 2021, our Farebox recovery requirement has been alleviated, which is a really good thing. The California Transit Association, prior to the pandemic in 2018, was asked by the California legislature to evaluate Farebox recovery ratio because it was so difficult for a lot of operators. A lot of operators, just like Clovis Transit, which is a small urban operation, to meet the Farebox ratio. So the CTA got a task force together and started looking at how do they solve this problem. They, before the pandemic, were able to release some draft plans. All of those draft plans have included either getting rid of Farebox recovery ratio all the way or significantly reducing its importance. So there will be other efficiencies measured for transit. It won't be the Farebox requirement. Approximately 60% of our passengers on stage line already don't pay a fare. Most people getting on the bus right now ride for free anyway. That's on our stage line side. Free public transit also removes a barrier that will impact low-income individuals and families. Even though $1.25 doesn't sound like a lot, it is a lot, especially for families that are living on the edge and every penny counts. Bus fare really can make a difference if they make it through the month. By removing the fare, we then make it very easy for folks to get to medical care, to educational institutions, and really just go out and do the normal things that everyone else does. When we, I don't know if you remember back to last fall, I know it seems like 5 years ago, but using some LC Top dollars, we did a free ride promotion that started in August, and we were able to continue out through the fall. During that time, our ridership increased by 1 month by 47%. So it was a really good demonstration project to let us know that if fares are free, our bus riders get on. We have a really difficult time measuring if those were unique riders, especially on our stage line service. But even if they weren't unique riders, that just means that people were able to ride the bus more often and more frequently. So they were able to use the bus to get to places they needed to go. We already have gone free fare in response to the pandemic. In April, we became fare free to try and provide a more safe work environment for our employees and to provide a little bit of relief for our community that was really, we were just smacked over the head with it, right? Lots of people were out of work. Everybody's lives were upside down, and this was a way for Clovis to provide a little bit of relief to the community. And if our future does not include Measure C, because that is part of our discussion and our analysis on this proposal, we have other options that if we were to have to meet our Farebox recovery ratio, other pots of funding could provide that gap for us. I know that was a whole lot of information. I provided here some financial data for you just so you can see the history of our Measure C allocations and then our Farebox ratio, our Farebox revenues over the past couple of years, and then how much of our Measure C we used to meet our Farebox ratio. So it has gone up. For fiscal year 1920, of course, it's 0, and then for 2021, it will also be 0 because of AB 90 and the relief we are currently under for Farebox revenue recovery. This, I will say, is something that we've looked at closely over the past and never really felt like the time was right. But right now we're in the middle of a pandemic. Ridership is down, but we already are providing free rides. And I do think that the Farebox recovery ratio as a efficiency metric for transit and a requirement for funding is on its way out. If in the future we'd have to go back to the passengers and start talking about fares again, we'll have that conversation. But for right now, this I think is one of the best things we can do. And I know that was a lot of information, so I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. Oh, and there's our wonderful staff. Now that's pre-pandemic, everyone, that's pre-pandemic. That was last year,
Okay.
but I never miss an opportunity to brag on the staff over at Transit.
I hope they're all still employed. That's where I thought you were going, was like, they get laid off?
Nope, we didn't lay
Very
anybody
good.
off. Yep.
Lynn, did you have a comment?
I do have a question. Amy, back on the slide where you talked about AB 90.
Yep.
The final bullet point, the last one, where it says Farebox recovery is currently under review. So we have relief through this fiscal year, but that's your comment about you think it will eventually go away entirely?
Correct. Based on the drafts that have come out from CTA's task force, they recommend either completely eliminating the Farebox revenue recovery ratio or taking it very low on the list of priorities for efficiencies. It loses its primary status because right now it's primary. And it really creates sort of this insidious circle where we're working really hard to try and meet our Farebox recovery because that's how we get our funding. And in order to do that, sometimes we think about cutting service because that controls our costs. But when we cut service, we then decrease the amount of passengers getting on our buses, and that decreases our fares. So the task force really recognized that. They called it out in their recommendation. They spelled it out and they even italicized it. So they really understand that it becomes sort of this insidious chasing your tail.
Circular.
Yeah. And there's other metrics that they recommended, and they also took away any financial penalty if you're not meeting the efficiency. They went much more to, we're going to help you along. What can we do to help you? Let's give you some funding to help you study why maybe your operation isn't as efficient as it should be, rather than we're going to take your money away.
And then, can I ask a follow-up question? I should know the answer to this question, which I'm about to ask, so don't judge, don't hold it against me. The funds that are currently Measure C funds used to fill in that gap, are those available to be used for something else in the transit world, or what will happen to those funds?
So we get an allocation from Measure C that we can use for transit operations.
Okay, so
we spell out that certain amount, the 435 or the 529 or the 681 as Farebox recovery, and that goes in all of our state reporting that that's how we're meeting our Farebox. That money would just be in our allocation.
So we could use it for some other transit-related operational need. Okay, great, thanks.
Yes, in fact, that's what I do. I spend my Measure C money first. When I'm spending my money, Measure C goes first.
Yeah, okay, thanks. Thanks, Drew.
Jose?
A few questions are kind of sort of unrelated, but they'll be related at the end. Public transit has had a kind of bad image over COVID because they're supposed to be super spreaders. How are we dealing with that to keep our drivers and our passengers safe with COVID all around us? Are we keeping our drivers and passengers safe so we are not super spreaders in Clovis?
Yes. We very quickly started to react to COVID. My transit staff's not here tonight, and I wish they were. I hope they're watching. One of them's on vacation. I hope she's watching. They worked hours and hours and hours trying to figure out how do we make the buses safer for our operators. We're concerned with our passengers too, but of course, right in the middle, right at the beginning, we were really concerned about how do we keep the operators safe. So we erected temporary barriers inside the bus cabs that would at least slow down some of the airflow and create a sense of safety for the bus operator. We started not taking cash. Everybody just started riding for free. Some operators that have buses with rear doors they started doing rear door boarding. That's not an option for us. But we began cleaning those buses every single night. So we now have hand sanitizer on the buses, and we fortified sort of I call it the cube. Our drivers are now inside of marine vinyl, these cubes that we've put inside of the buses and the vans. We've also attached pieces of plexiglass in between the seats, because if we were going to have to try to abide by the 6-foot rule, we could only have 3 passengers on board. Now, there were some days we only had 3 passengers on board, but as people start going back to work, hopefully when schools open back up, we are going to need to have passengers on board safely. We feel like we've created a very safe environment, or as safe as we possibly can be right now.
Because by reducing the fee, we are going to incentivize trips, and you said that in your report, and so my concern was that, are we going to become super spreaders of COVID, and what have we done to prevent that? Because the people we serve are the most vulnerable too, the poor and the people that need transportation. So, we're doing, the road to hell is paved by good intentions. So are we helping the poor, but yet helping spread the virus? So we don't have any of these sanitizers that every day we go with, they're foggers or something like that, so we can fog them. Do we have anything like that?
We do. The buses are fogged every night, and if it's not every night, it's in the morning before they leave out, before pull out. And your point is a good one, because we talked about that, and we weren't the only operation talking about, if we zero out fares, are we just encouraging people to get on board in an unsafe environment? And I really feel like we've created the most safe environment we possibly can. And just a reminder, all transit operators in the state of California are mandated to wear masks anytime they're in their vehicle. We've gone a step further. Anytime they're at the corp yard, they have to be masked. So they're masked. Our passengers are all wearing masks. And if our passengers don't have a mask, we provide one for them.
Thank you.
Bob, go ahead.
Thank you, Amy. And I think, Councilman Whaley, way back, I remember you made the suggestion to make it free. I'm glad that we are there, given the amount of dollars that we get. I wanted to see this as a moment of innovation, a moment of planning, especially with VMT. I think that somehow your department needs to be involved with planning department and going, where do those monies come and how do they help us move forward in all the planning process and in making our transit one that also qualifies for this VMT, because the only one that qualifies right now is FACTS, right? The one that goes right there to service the mall. And so how do we also get there, and how do these dollars help us get there, so that way our development communities all fall into some transportation corridor? And so I hope that it moves that way, and that we start to look at that and how do we qualify, whether it's numbers, whatever it is, planning routes, so that I want us just to get there, and so that way as a community we don't just rely on facts now. We are independent and able to help development, and also how those dollars help you and your department make it all come about. And so I wanted to just lay that out. One thing that I also was very disturbed by when Clovis Unified did their dual college, you can get a degree from community college. It bothered me because I went to those meetings and they didn't provide any transportation to go to Clovis Community College. So if I'm poor and I'm in Southeast, forget it. I'm not going to Clovis Community College because my parent has to take off work, come back, take me to go take a college course. So how do we start to collaborate and help each other and help communities and do transportation differently in that sense. That's just an example. And so how do we collaborate and go, okay, there is a pocket, there are juniors and seniors from Clovis High, Clovis East, who if they need to go to a community college all the way up to Clovis North, how do we get them there? How do we get them back, even if it's at 10 o'clock if they take a night class? And I think those are ways in which I think entities can start to work together. And when the mayor and I met with the VA, they also said, we don't have transportation from the one on Clinton to the new facility, and can we collaborate together? And I said, and we were thinking, yeah, we don't have enough uses potentially, but maybe there's some collaboration funding mechanisms in which we can be, sort of the one that makes that work for everyone. And so I just look at it and I go, it's great for our citizens. I just hope that we resolve the VMT and also resolve some of the issues that are happening within our community. I know it's not a question, but even if you have a comment and we're doing that stuff, that's great. But I just thought that'd be a great way to help out the community.
Well, I can share with you that I was invited to the kickoff meeting for VMT in the planning department and was really confused about why I had been invited until we started going through the mitigation. And then I realized, oh, I'm going to be very popular because it's a 13% mitigation. I am now the prom queen. I got it. So those conversations have been going on for the beginning. I've had a crash course in urban planning, which has really been great. But we will now incorporate VMT consideration in any of our transit planning because it's just so important.
Amy, just real quickly, I think this almost segues really well with our senior meals program, because once the pandemic wave kind of goes into the history books, we can hook our seniors up with downtown, with farmers market, with the ability to maybe take some adult school classes and things like that so that they don't sit at home and be lonely. And this is an opportunity, like Vong said, for our younger kids who maybe don't have a family, doesn't have a car, or maybe mom and dad work, and this is their opportunity to get to Clovis Community College so they can start their degree and do the things that are going to make them successful. And also, I also wear another hat. I'm a board member of the San Joaquin Valley Air Pollution Control District. If you noticed our air, right when the pandemic started, probably April, May, we were in an attainment of the Clean Air Act. I mean, you could see things you couldn't see before. Unfortunately, the forest fires have kind of submarined that. But about 70% of air pollution in the valley comes from what's called mobile sources, vehicles. Most of the time it's diesel vehicles, but also cars. And if we can get cars off the road, it'll help with the environment, it'll help with downtown parking, it will help with some of our community events, congestion, VMT. You're not just popular because of VMT, just so you know. But it'll help us on a lot of different things. We have that. Nobody else? Okay, I'll open this to the public.
Just a quick question.
No, Lynn, go ahead.
Amy, I should know the answer to this question, but how, prior to your current prom popularity, how involved was transit planning in some of the land use planning? Because I do imagine a future, especially in any of our urban centers where they're farther away from Old Town or the heart, that sort of building in that access to transit, or are you guys sort of you follow the development? When a new neighborhood pops up, then you figure out how to incorporate them into your routes. How does that work?
So what we do is we keep an eye on development and what's happening. I get all the emails about development review, and we'll pop in if it looks like it's a pretty big apartment complex or a big housing unit going in. We keep an eye on it because not necessarily just because you build it will they ride. So we always incorporate what's going on in building, but really more important to us is where are the corridors, what's the development looking like along Herndon and Shaw and Bullard, and what are the big points of interest from there, and then we kind of work it backwards.
Okay.
I will say, I have a big chunk of grant money that's sitting waiting for a route redevelopment project that was stopped by the pandemic, because that was one of my biggest things. We really need to look at our routes and look at changing some of our dynamics, but now the traffic, the way people are traveling has changed so much, and I really need to get us up to about 75% of our ridership for any of the onboarding, offboarding data to be valid for me to change any of our routes. So that project's kind of gone on ice, but that's a part of it. You're exactly right. We do pay attention to what's happening in the city so we can plan appropriately.
Amy, just to kind of segue into what Vaughn talked about a little earlier, the VA Medical Center project at Herndon and Armstrong, they're going to stage that because they don't have the funding for it just quite yet, but they're going to use it as a parking lot. And if anybody here has ever tried to find a parking space at the VA, it's really, really difficult. So hopefully we'll be in a position to explore a route down to the VA, because it'll certainly help patients, but it will also help employees. So if that would be great if we could pull that off. Any member of the public wish to address council on this item in chambers? Seeing none, do we have anybody online?
None.
Did we get any emails on this, Mr. Clerk?
No.
Okay, I will close public comments and come back to council for action or discussion.
If I may.
Yes, I think you should, Bob.
Well, I do want to make that motion. I'm really excited that we've gotten to this point, but I don't know how you have all felt about your first experience coming to the Clovis City Council, but when you start digging into transit and how it works, it was really excruciating for me to figure out how it works and why it works the way that it does work. And I am so excited that, Amy, you are not just, did you say you were the popular prom date?
Oh my gosh. Prom queen?
Okay, good. I wanted to make sure that you had the right title, that you were the prom queen. Because what we are looking for from you is this continued creativity, and not just changing things for the sake of changing things, but the way that you have approached this has really been absolutely appropriate. We tested it out last fall. We realized that our ridership went up. We have those types of numbers to back up what it is that we are trying to do, and I think that what we're trying to do is it's not to make money off of transit, because you can never make money off of transit. I figured that out pretty quickly. But what we want to do is we want to reduce the amount of greenhouse gas emissions within the city of Clovis. And if we can increase our transit ridership, then we are going to be, I think, an active participant in that process. And I do think about all of those people who maybe aren't going from point A to point B because they want to save gas, or they don't want to spend money on the ticket, and so they choose not to do that. But now I think that they're going to be able to do that, and even more so after this COVID pandemic passes. But it's I'm just really proud of you, and I expect more now. You have shown us that the old stodgy transit is not what it used to be, and it's an opportunity for us to be really creative. And I think that you've got a lot of momentum behind you, not just here in the city of Clovis, but also statewide, as they're finally opening up their eyes to the potential for what transit can do in communities like ours. So anyway, thank you for your patience in letting me say all of those words. And at this point, I am moving that we approve the resolution amending the city's master administrative fee schedule to eliminate Clovis transit fares.
I'll second it. We have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Motion passes unanimously.
I feel like there should be fireworks or something going on. No. Right.
And now we come to the Clovis Fire Show. Item 13, consider approval of the resolution accepting the staffing for adequate fire and emergency response SAFER grant award in the amount of $3,989,655 to staff 9 firefighters for a period of 3 years and amending the 2020-21 fiscal year city budget and positions allocation for the required additional personnel. And Chief Banaski is our presenter. Chief.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council, and yes, I've been teased for the entire past week that yes, this is the fire show for the remainder of the council meeting. But lots of good news, a little bit of bad news. I wouldn't be myself if I didn't include a little bad news in there. So just some exciting news. We'll start off with the first one. So we came to you, kind of discussed it back in April of 20 that we applied for a SAFER grant. We did this in preparation for the opening of Station 6, which would require us to staff a new engine company, which is 3 people per shift or 9 additional firefighters. And our thought was is that we would apply this year, see what happened, learn from it, and then have an opportunity to apply again in 21 before we open the fire station in January of 22. But myself, Deputy Chief Eck, my life safety manager, Chad Fitzgerald, who's at home because of the limitations in here watching, and Battalion Chief Tony Gomes, we really worked hard on it, being an accredited fire department, all of our data-driven decision-making, that annual report that you get to see with all the graphs and showing where we were short in the southeast and our response times there. We submitted our grant, put our best foot forward, and we were notified. It was a early birthday present for myself. I actually left town, and Chad called me at 6:50 when I was with my wife to wake me up to tell me that we got the SAFER grant. So I was okay. I was like perfectly fine. Good reason to wake me. So I was extremely happy about that. So on September 16th of this year, we were announced that we were awarded a SAFER grant. So this will basically fund the staffing that we'll use for Station 6. Now, the only somewhat negative side of this is we'll have to bring the staffing on a little bit earlier than the opening of the fire station. And compared to where some of the, if you recall, this department got a SAFER grant, a smaller amount back in like 2011 for during the last recession. This one is for an expansion, so upon acceptance that we can't drop below 61 operational personnel for the 2 years following the grant period. But that being said, those people would be hired. They were in the 5-year forecast. They were all pre-planned for the opening of Station 6. So when we applied, here was the original grant terms. It was a 3-year grant, 75% for the first year, 25% from the city. So we were on the hook for $465. Same terms for year 2. Year 3, they went to 35% for the grant. We were responsible, the city was, for $997,000. So at the end, roughly $2 million the federal government was going to pay for. The city of Clovis would pay for 1.9. Now, if there's ever been any good news from COVID, which this is about as far of a stretch as I can get, is that because of the economic uncertainty, a lot of people didn't apply for SAFER because they just didn't know what the economics were going to be for local government. They didn't want to be, it was not the retained positions, it had to be for an expansion. So lots of jurisdictions didn't put in. But we felt it was still a good time. We had it in our 5-year forecast. We knew we were going to open the station. So we submitted the grant. We got awarded, and we then got a waiver, a hardship waiver. So the federal government picked up the entire 100% of the grant for a total of $3,989,655. So the largest grant we've received in fire department history. Yeah, free is great. So we actually have no match. The only requirement is that we will have to meet some of the terms. So again, we'll have to bring the company on a little bit earlier. So we have to have our hiring no later than April of 21. So roughly with the grant paying for it, will be about 8 months early than when we anticipate the opening of Station 6 in 22. The grant also only covers firefighter positions. So when we staff a fire engine, we have a fire captain, a fire engineer, and then a firefighter. The grant was for firefighters, so we do know we have $140,000 for that new company that we have to absorb as the city for the additional wages for the engineer and the captains on each shift. So, and that was there. So we make up the difference. Wait, go back. So we have the difference, about $140,000 for the difference between the engineer and captain. Also, the grant funds a quarter behind. So what you have in front of you is we need a budget transfer for the remainder of this fiscal year to be able to fund the amounts for the first quarter of the hiring, which is the $365, and then the actual revenue reimbursement will occur in the first quarter of next fiscal year to pay us back for those funds. So that's why we need the budget transfer to cover the hiring. So again, really good news. We put our best foot forward. My team did a great job. We reviewed every aspect of that grant over and over and over, making sure we put in. But it really helps when you're accredited. You could show the need. We had an established list, and we were going to staff a fire station, so it was going to increase our decrease response times, increase what they call effective response force, the amount of firefighters we can put on a fire. So we scored very well, and we were fortunate enough to get the grant along with the waiver.
Any questions for the chief? Bob?
Because we're going to be bringing on some firefighters earlier than maybe we were planning, do you expect that that's going to assist with decreasing overtime costs?
They won't parallel, because what we will do is we will have to put, in order to meet the grant terms, we will put another engine company in service. So we'll put a second engine company at Station 5 because it has 6 bedrooms. So starting, we'll hire them in April, we'll put them through an academy. June 16th, we will staff, in essence, what would become Engine 6. It'll respond out of Station 5 till Engine 6 is completed, and we will have the 6th engine company starting in June.
So I want to make sure that I understood that response. We're going to hire people in April of 2021 and
Correct.
Put them through the academy. So
Our in-house academy, 6 weeks, where we show them the Clovis way, the way our policies are.
Like a field training officer kind of a situation?
Correct.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Lynn?
Chief, a couple questions, and I guess it's a question for you and then the city manager. So in terms of the additional $140,000 for the captain and engineer salaries, so that's a manageable, budgetable expense. And this is the grant that at the end of 3 years, then those firefighters are fully our employees. We need to fund them entirely out of the general fund. So in our forecasting, that would be in a 5-year forecast, we would account for that additional personnel, I assume?
So our 5-year forecast included all of these personnel coming on board at the end of 2021.
Not April of 2021, but the end of 2020, okay.
Correct.
Okay.
So the way I look at this is whatever these 9 personnel would cost us, we had in our 5-year forecast starting at the beginning of 2022, calendar year 2022. This grant will bring them on early, so that's an unintended expense.
Right.
But even when you net it out, this is a $3 million savings to our 5-year forecast.
Okay.
And our 5-year forecast had those positions forever.
Okay.
So we had assumed we were going to start paying them on January 1. We're not going to start paying them really until April of 24. So
Okay,
it's,
I just wanted to, I couldn't remember if that was.
we are,
good there.
this is very good.
Doesn't get any better than that.
The thing we do have to remember a little bit is that we will have a large bill come 24. So, we can't spend all that money on somewhere else. We do have the bill that will come down. So it's an opportunity to use those funds for one-time expenditures, but just know the fact then we kind of go from, this is the negative side of the 100% of funding. That's why they normally do the stair step to kind of, wean you off, where now we'll go from 100% paid by someone else to 100% paid for by the city.
And then my last question is, the station is supposed to be open, say again, end of 21?
January of 22.
January of 22. So is there any A, advantage, or B, possibility of having the station open a tad earlier so we could put these firefighters to work, or?
Well, the firefighters will go to work right now.
Work in their new station and their new service area and all the rest.
It'll be the tightest timeline based on where we are right now to meet the January of '22.
All right.
We should go out to bid here later this month, hopefully bid awards in December, and then 10 or 11 months of construction, a month or so for us to get everything moved in, and then we'll open it.
Okay.
But in the meantime, we have auto aid partners on the west side of the city with Fresno. We don't have auto aid departments on the east side. So we've looked at, Chad did a great job of running all the data, looking at, true response times and how fast engines arrive at fires and things along those lines. So putting it at Station 5 is the best location for it to be able to help in that southeast area, more for being the second or third engine into fire alarms or multiple calls down there.
As a resident of the southeast area, thank you.
Same with myself. So I'm in the same location, and it takes them a while. My neighbor had a seizure down the street, and it definitely does take a while for us to get there.
Thanks.
And getting 9 additional personnel in April before fire season gives you a little extra, some extra people so that your people aren't deployed as much. Would that be accurate?
I think we deploy the same, we just have more personnel to rotate through the amount of people. But our deployment wouldn't change of our commitment. And we went above and beyond our normal deployment agreement just because it's one of the largest wildland fires, and it was in our backyard. And that fire was somewhere else. We probably would not have sent 4 engine companies like we did to this fire.
And I should probably know this, seems to be one of the things a lot of us are saying tonight. I assume that the wildfire component training is taught in the fire academy. I'm assuming we don't teach that as part of our training program, or do we?
We do both. So they come with the required training according to state fire training requirements for firefighter 1, but then we put them through. Most of what we're trying to do is, this is the way, there's multiple different ways to bed hose, pull hose, throw ladders, there's different variations. We standardize all those functions, and that's what we do during our academy. It's our policies. This is how our stations are. This is how our hose is pulled. This is how we do wildland here in the Central Valley of progressive hose lays and things along those lines. And that's how we mold them to become good Clovis employees during that period.
Great. Any other questions for staff? Seeing none, I'll open this to the public. Does any member of the public present in chambers wish to address the council on this item? Seeing none, do we have anybody online?
No.
Did we get any letters, Mr. Clerk?
No.
Okay, I will close public comments and come back to council for happy action.
I'll make a happy motion that we accept the staffing for the Safer Grant Award in the amount of $3,989,655, and adjusting the budget allocation for the first quarter.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Motion passes unanimously. Item 14, consider approval of resolution accepting the Assistance to Firefighter Grant AFG and amending the 2020-2021 fiscal year budget to reflect $144,147.27 in grant funding awarded to funding the purchase of Source Capture Extraction Systems, SCES, for city fire stations. Chief Banaski.
Again, this basically rounded out the trifecta for grants. We got the COVID grant money, we then got SAFER, and then on the same day we were noticed for this AFG grant. We know you've all been by the fire station, so you see the hose that gets hooked up to the exhaust pipe of the fire station. Well, that works great for when we're in the station and we pull out. So, and those were all put in well over 15 years ago. So kind of the old technology is it captures the diesel exhaust and the contaminants when we leave the fire station, but it doesn't do anything for when we actually pull into the fire station. And the manufacturer who built the units at station 2, 3, and 4, that company's out of business. Repairs were hard. We brought a person down from Oregon to get one of the systems back and operational. So we started the process along with the grant. So in this year's fiscal budget under General Facility CIP, there was a budget item to start the replacement of 3 fire stations. again, great staff put together. We submitted a grant. The grant then in turn now picks up a majority of the cost to put these, and they're ceiling mounted. So now anytime the engine's on, it sends out a RF signal. It then captures or turns them on. It captures any contaminants in the air, puts them through a filter, then exhausts them out through the roof. And now it works for when we pull in and when we pull out. We don't have to hook them up to the engine anymore. It runs all the time. So this is the best, newest technology. We had a general fund budget already established, CIP fund for the replacement. This grant does require a match of 10% or approximately $14,147. And in turn, we will use what was already allocated in the CIP fund to make the match. So again, some project we were originally going to do, we had a budget in this year's budget. Grant funds now free up some of those general fund dollars to be able to use or for another project or another need within the city.
Thank you, Chief. Any questions for staff? Seeing none, I'll open this up to the public. Any member of the public in chambers wish to address the council on this item? Seeing none, do we have anybody online?
None.
Do we have any letters, Mr. Clerk?
None.
Okay, I will close public comment and come back to council for action.
I'll move for approval.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Item 15, consider approval various actions associated with the acquisition of fire apparatus. A, consider approval, waive the city's formal bidding requirements and authorize the sole source purchase of one Pierce triple combination pumper fire apparatus from Golden State Fire Apparatus in Sacramento for the total purchase price of $748,277.25. And B, consider approval of a resolution to amend the Public Utilities Department and General Services budget to provide funding for the purchase of one Pierce triple combination pumper fire apparatus. Chief Banaski.
Battalion Chief Jim Duke, who's spoken here many times on our fleet, does an excellent job of speccing out, maintaining, and getting us the best products we can for our fleet. We have an entire fleet of Pierce products. We've been that way since 1996. It really assists us when parts or items that we need, because we can stock them at the city shop. We have a lot of the spare parts, so it keeps our downtime minimal by having a much more consistent fleet. We have 2 engines in production that the City Council graciously authorized, I don't know if it was last fiscal year or possibly even the fiscal year before. No, I guess that would be in the end of 19 that are in just starting production. This will be in another engine exactly the same. We were slated to come to City Council in December for this purchase to be using DIF fees in order to purchase the engine for Station 6. Because of the grant award for SAFER, we're now here as quickly as possible. It still, we'll have to put that company in a reserve engine when we start in June. The estimated build time for this is 10 months. By the time it gets out here, passes inspection, we outfit it, figure it's a year from now. So we probably won't have it till in service till October of 21. It fits our standard purchase through Golden State, which is the only authorized Pierce manufacturer representative on the West Coast. And we did use GSA pricing and some other means to validate the price to make sure it was the most competitive. And then since this is a new, normally what happens is we get an engine, we take an engine out of service, so we repurpose a lot of the items that are on there in order to reduce cost. This is an expansion unit, so that's why we have the $96,000 in equipment cost on top of it, because we have to purchase all new hose, all new radios. Nothing on it can be repurposed, so it's unfortunately expansion, so it requires the additional cost of all of the new equipment. This is paid for out of developer impact fees. As of the end of last fiscal year, there was a little over $1 million in that account. We've done well so far with reimbursement, so that fund is progressing along with enough funds in that account to pay the last payment for Station 1 out of it.
Any questions for staff? Seeing none, I will open this to the public. Any member of the public wish to address council on this item? Anyone in chambers? Seeing none, we have anybody online?
None.
We get any letters, Mr. Clerk?
None.
Okay, I will close public comments and come back to the council for discussion and action.
Move for approval.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Great work, Chief.
Well, thank you very much, Mayor, City Council. I appreciate the support. I know my department is very excited about all this and the ability of the grants to help facilitate this, which is fantastic. And now let's go to the bad news. I don't know why I can never... Well, it's funny because everybody's been teasing my deputy chief, like, does the fire chief get to go give all the good news and then you get to come up and give the bad news? So, well, here's where we're at. So we might as well just start with the...
Well, you might as well let me call it first
sorry.
there, okay? Don't get ahead of yourself. Okay, administrative items. These are items, administrative items are matters on the regular city council agenda other than public hearings. Item 16, receive and file a report, which apparently is going to be bad news. Update on Fire Station 2 located at 2300 Minnewawa Avenue. Chief Beneski.
Well, if you recall from the previous years of the annual report where we started rating fire stations and their needs and stuff, Station 2 has been there at the D-. We didn't want to call it an F, but as we progress through this, we will now call it an F. The fire station was built in 1977. We occupied it in 1978, so it's been in existence now for over 42 years. The building does now require significant repair, upgrades, and modernization. So the fire station was never built for a dual gender workforce. It had originally an open bunk room where everybody slept out or slept in an open area. We have since converted into, we'll call them semi-legal dorm rooms. 3 out of the 4 are. And then the bathroom, and I got a little picture of it, but you'll see it as we talk about a, multi-gender workforce it's the traditional bathroom where you go in. It has the 2 open showers. It has 2 stalls, 2 sinks, not an individual bathroom. So depending on who's using it, it's the only one there, so you have to lock the door. Someone else can't use the bathroom. That's another one of the big issues. It still has the original kitchen. We've never spent any funds there other than to paint it. So there's been no real kitchen. It's got the original cabinets and everything else that's in there. So this May, we are doing an upgrade to the garage door openers. So the garage door openers and the roll-up doors have been there for many, many years. Through a project we did with facilities, we started replacing some of the garage door openers. So they were doing some electrical work and had to go up into the attic and the apparatus bay. And as they went up to the attic to run the electrical wiring, they noticed several broken trusses. We brought city engineering out, myself, the city manager. We looked at it, and the decision was made that this is probably outside the regular scope of work of the standard city engineer staff, and we found a firm to come out and look at it. So the firm came out, made 2 on-site inspections in June, and they developed a very significant repair list. I figured visual will really, show. There is the repair list just to make the fire station safe and operational for another 5 years. So this gentleman did an excellent job, reviewed it. Now, some of the drawbacks to it is it's a non-destructive test. So he did not pull or destroy any part of the fire station. This was a straight in-depth visual inspection. We do know, and he admits in his report, that as you start to repairs or start to pull things apart, there will be additional problems found. Just at a bare minimum, what needs to occur, the entire apparatus bay ceiling needs to be removed. We need to go back in and re-strengthen and reattach all of the trusses. We need to remove portions on the inside the fire station, along the living area, along the wall. We have to remove all of the first 2 rows at a minimum of the roofing tiles. And all of the wood siding needs to come off because it has no tar paper, no paint or anything behind it. It's basically been dry rotting and rotting away for the last 40 years. And again, even if we did these repairs, his best guess estimate, it was buy us another 5 years of existence in the station, and it still wouldn't fix any of the modernization of the bathroom, the dorm rooms, or things that we need. It also, for the aspect of it, is once we start to do this, the fire station currently is not ADA compliant. We will probably basically trigger the 20% rule, give or take, so then we would have to make bathroom repairs and stuff to make it ADA compliant. So, bigger picture speaks 1,000 words. I've just got a few of them. This is currently what the apparatus bay and one of the bays looks like. You can see the shoring that's running in the bays. You can see the hoses that we have for the exhaust system that we're replacing. You can see the dry rot up in the left-hand corner that's rotted off all the eaves, the top two where they've been cut. Even the fascia has been cut. Part of the weather stripping in the roof is actually going the wrong way. So normally you see the overlap like this, over the piece like this, as the water runs down the slope of the roof. Ours goes like this, so it just captures it. That's what's eating away the fascia board right there. This is part of the mechanical room where you can see that there's no paper or anything down. And you can see it now rotting, and that's where all the air conditionings are and stuff. So this weekend, over the back patio, we put T-shoring up and shored up all the back patio with the USAR crew to make sure that that didn't fall down. Here's just inside. You can see the, on the right lower, you can see the cross members broken off and missing. The top right one, you can see the broken truss. Top left one, you can see the piece that's missing. And then the bottom one, you can see where the lighter color is there. That's where the gusset plate used to be connected, and now it's separating and pulling its way out. Up on the top, you can see some of the issues with the roof of why the first two rows need to be removed. You can see this one on the right, the interior, top right is the interior of the station. You can see it again where it's separated from the gusset plate. Bottom left is and the bottom right are additional broken trusses. So this is some of the damage that we have now discovered inside the fire station. Here you go, you can see where the stucco is, the screws have rusted off and now the stucco is falling off the building. Part of the other problem that you see on the lower left is if you look at most places that have been built in the last 20 or so, the stucco's off the ground and there's basically a drip along the edge of the concrete to allow water out. We don't have that. It's been sealed all the way to the concrete floor everywhere in the building. So as a result, all the water and moisture has been accumulating inside. We did do, based on this report, mold testing. The mold testing did come back negative, so, and the asbestos testing came back. So right now there appears to be no hazard now that we shored it to the crew that's operating inside. And then in the back, just an example of the siding that you see on the top, all of that needs to be pulled off and replaced. And then this is just the idea of where you can see the open bathroom with the urinals, the sink. They're not individuals. There's the showers on the other side with just the curtains, and then there's the original bathroom of items that need to be modernized as we move forward with some decision-making processes. So where we're at right now is City Engineering and Facilities is working with a couple firms to give us an estimate of what the repairs might cost. The bare minimum estimated cost, and this is a very, very rough estimate, is at a bare minimum, we're probably into it for $500,000, and that doesn't make anything ADA. It doesn't do anything. That's fixing as few of the items as we can in order to keep the place operational. Part of what we've looked at is making a CIP project to do instead of building a temporary renting a modular location to put the crew at the station or another location, and then in turn getting rid of the modular. The idea is to build a metal 2,900 square foot building at the training center. The crews then would operate out of there, and in turn we would have a nice PD fire training room with ADA compliant bathrooms. And we do have some CIP money set aside for the ADA bathroom remodel that's required to occur out there that we'd instead use and repurpose to this. That estimated is probably somewhere between $750,000 to $1 million to build that building. And then basically we're at the point where we have Station 6. We've already value engineered that design. We already have a construction management firm, Vanner and Taylor Group, for the design. The best and probably item to do for cost-wise, because basically everything's spec'd in it, everything is ready to go, would be to put that design, change the elevations obviously to fit the area, but put that station design at the site of Station 2, estimated is between 8 and 9 million, depending on what demolition costs would be for the existing building. So unfortunately, there is the bad news of the day is that Station 2 is structurally in a rough spot right now. We've got it shored up, it's operational, but we're going to have to move forward on either repairing it, modernizing it, or building something new, which would be a hit to the budget. Now, the good side to it is that station is in an excellent location. It will be operational once it's rebuilt for another 30 or 40 years with minimal cost. So it's not dependent on a repayment schedule like it is for Station 6, where we need to have it paid off before we can start to build Station 7 using DIF. So it does give us some options to look at more long-term financing than a short-term 10 or 15-year financing like we've done for the other fire stations, because we need them paid off before we can start building the next station.
Can you go over that financing for me one more time, please? If we were to build a new station.
Well, the difference between, so let's use Station 6, where we're going to talk about probably all in, somewhere around $10 million for the land purchase, all the pieces that go to it. We have to pay that back in a period of time, so we then have funds from developer impact fees to start building Station 7. So we can't really finance it for 20 or 30 years, or else we won't have the money to build the next fire station as the city grows. This station is in a prime location. It's serving the community. It's actually our busiest fire station. And the location works really well to our response matrix and guidelines. Know that once it's built, it'll have probably a 40 year lifespan before it needs to be replaced. So in turn to lower the general fund outlay each year, we could do something of extending that payment, because it's not like we have to have it paid off in a certain amount of time. Interest rates currently, or bond rates, are the lowest they'd possibly be. So you could get into the 20 or 30 year. I'm not 100% sure they sell municipal bonds for 30, but it's Wall Street. I'm sure they'd sell us anything. But at a bare minimum, compared to that, is we don't have to have it paid off before we have to move on to the next one like we do with Station 6. So 6, we're looking at a 15-year repayment. This one we could go with the 30. And especially as rates as low as they are, it probably makes better sense to have some wiggle room for the general fund in the future.
And you would, your estimate for a new facility was going to be 8 to 9 million. Did I hear that correctly?
8 to 9, and then we'd still have the million for the other. So probably all in is probably close to $10 million under current cost today.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions for staff? Seeing none, I'll open this to the public. Any member of the public in chambers want to address the council on this item? Seeing none, we have anybody online?
None.
Did we get any letters?
None.
Okay, I will close public comment and come back to council for discussion or for action.
I actually had 2 more questions. I don't know if you did then.
Bob.
So, it seems to me that maybe having a fire station that's going to last 40 years is a good long-term plan. I don't like the idea of raising a fire station after 40 years and then putting up a brand new one. Is it your expectation, though, that Station 1 and Station 5 and some of the other stations only have a 40-year life expectancy?
I would tell you, throughout the fire service, absolutely, there's probably 40 to 50 years. If you look at the current Station 1, they left the one that basically has a lot of these exact same issues that was at Bullard and Fowler, and that's why they moved it over to Station 1. But basically that same concept is after about, it's just a trade-off of where you are to meet the new building codes and everything else, that it's less expensive almost to, and you have to have them, a place for them to respond out of and some other things to rebuild than it is to try to maintain it along the way. Just everything changes of what's required inside of them, and
I just have these, visions of old fire stations that have been around for decades in some of these locations throughout our country that, have develop some historical significance to their community. And I'd just hate to see in another, I don't know now what it would be, 30 years that we're tearing down Station 1, current Station 1 in Old Town, and then rebuild one. But, so I thought that there might be a maintenance plan in place that would allow us to cause our buildings to last longer.
Well, and we do have a maintenance plan. I mean, like Station 3, we've re-roofed the roof, we've painted it, we've redone the entire kitchen in it to bring it up and bring things along the way. We do our best, and even the ones that you see that, you know, have been in San Francisco or older cities like that for, 100 years per se, all that's really remaining from, let's say, 100 years ago normally is the old brick four walls, and everything else inside has been, modernized. And this station, and I would tell you probably the difference hopefully between ones is not all of it needs to be torn down. Parts of it will need to be done in the future and changed. And in Tulare, where I was, we remodeled and did significant remodels on 2 stations to modernize them, bring them in, new roofs and all those things. They still kept one of them kept the architectural feel of the area and where it was with the exterior walls, but pretty much everything that was interior got gutted and we left 3 walls. So that's kind of what you see out there is the industry standard where we are. This one, I don't necessarily know if I would trust the 3 walls that would be remaining that aren't completely dry rotted or gone. And part of the problem is who built the trusses and stuff was actually a company here. As soon as the engineer showed up, he knew exactly who made it. It was a company off of Toll House up here. They misquoted for whatever reasons the quality of the wood, the degree of the wood, and he also told us that on Barstow and Fowler on the northwest corner that there were several homes in there that all of the trusses had been removed and had to be replaced years ago by the same, because they were unfortunately made by that same manufacturer. So part of this is and that company went out of business, I think he said, in '86. So that's the other portion that presents us that problem for that fire station is that there was a subpar product that company no longer around, so we can't hold them responsible.
Well, I think I get that with the trusses, but it seems like there was also some poor construction of this particular facility when you were talking about the stucco that was along the side of the building. Do we have any other fire stations that were built by the same builder?
No. And I think actually when he mentions it, part of that in 77 is what a lot of stuff was all built in 77. Just a lot of, if you had a home like that, odds are you've pulled off the stucco or done repairs along the years to fix that. And I do say that, but we added the bay and it matches, so I guess they made it look just like the rest of it. So even where we added it, and I think we added that in early 2000s or maybe late 90s, because it used to be a 2-bay fire station, now it's 3 bays. The 3rd bay actually matches the same with the stucco to the ground and pieces like that, so.
Well, I would just comment that that is our busiest station. I really think that though it's not in Old Town Clovis, it seems to be getting, some of our most action and probably will, I would say, for the foreseeable future. Whatever we build there, I just want it to be high quality and absolutely suitable for the type of activity that we're going to see generated out of that station. And though I don't like spending a lot of money, I don't want to spend a lot of money and then have it be second rate. To the degree that maybe gives you some direction, at least from my perspective, that is something that's a priority for me.
And I do appreciate that, and what we have put with Vanner and stuff into Station 6 has been a really good team effort with facilities, engineering. Russ Taylor from Taylor Group's been an excellent architect for that project, and I think we have put the best possible items in there when it comes to heating, air conditioning, all the mechanical, the stucco look. I just don't necessarily know that where we put red tile for that look in the southeast, whatever we did there is the functionality, the layout of the station's been reviewed by the station committee and, the architect, lots of people to know that it's the right layout. It's just a matter of if we choose to go that route, what do we make it look like to blend in with the area of because I don't necessarily know if the white with the terracotta roof would be the right look for that neighborhood.
Lynn?
You touched on it briefly, but, so I'm not, I think I agree with Bob. I would rather spend the money on the future building you could operate jointly at the training center than, I can't imagine you can do all that work for $500,000. I'm trying to remodel a bathroom, and I think it could cost, no, I'm just kidding. But I mean, nothing is, so $500,000 doesn't seem like very much money for all of that work.
Oh, no, that was just the bare minimum to pull the ceiling and fix the trusses and stuff.
So you've got $1 million to get the station to even be suitable for 5 years-ish? So I would lean toward investing in a metal building that could then have a dual purpose after you were done, if I had to choose. But my question is, in the southwest area, this is still your best location? I mean, this is where you would choose. If you could move it anywhere, would you still leave it right there?
Yes.
Okay.
It's actually in a very good location. Where we're located and behind the commercial, I would say it's an ideal location. Response times are well. We're not going to grow any farther to the south or to the west in that location. It serves that community quite well. It is in the ideal location. We own it. We did expand a purchase several years ago, like 15 years ago, a little bit farther into the back with the idea of potentially putting a modular out there to live in, because we've known that this is going to have to be rebuilt. It just, working on the same site just doesn't seem like that's the most practical idea. So that's when I talked about this one, that we'd have some use for it after we, always look at that return on investment. What's our return on investment? And I think that one gives us the best return on investment by running out of the training center for a period while the station's rebuilt.
Yeah, and I think it's, we haven't invested in a city infrastructure, city building in the southwest community for a really long time.
And even if we do move forward, you're looking at probably a 3-year project before we're out there. So we'll be well into 45, 46 years on that structure.
Yeah, thanks.
So Chief, talk to me about the Public Safety Training Center, that building you would build there, temporary building. Now, does that have to meet fire department code? Because is that an essential public safety building and has to be to those codes that meet?
It's not going to be an essential service building. It's going to be a temporary alternative use.
And it's okay to be in something like that for fire?
For temporary, as long as we're there not more than 12 months.
So we've done all the research, and they say it's okay for firemen to be in something like that.
Yes.
So it could be done in a more economic way.
And what's ironic about it is, and I hate to say it this way, so if any of my firefighters are listening, this is not my opinion, this is the way the state looks at it, is the state is actually not concerned, unfortunately, the Essential Service Act of the buildings, with the actual firefighters that are inside. They're actually concerned about the fire apparatus. So as long as this building doesn't house the fire apparatus, we're perfectly fine. So that would be the same thing of purchasing a modular home, putting it in the back, living out of the modular home. The fire engine wouldn't be in it. So as long as we don't put the fire engine in it, which would not be our intent, we're perfectly fine and we don't have to meet the Essential Service Act. So that's how the Essential Service Act was actually designed, was where's the engine housed.
And so at a training center, where would the engines be, out in the open?
During the day, we'd get a metal awning we put out in the open, and then at night we'd park it in the old fleet shop.
Okay, so that answers my question regarding that. So now, I think it should be demolished. I mean, I think the councils back in the day didn't build legacies. They built frugal, stucco wooden buildings that would last 20 years. So wonder they've had it for 40, And they were ugly, very, they were very frugal people. And then, it was functional and it probably didn't have the standards they have today, right? As far as the essential buildings.
Oh, no, I don't think there's any essential building at that current station whatsoever, to be honest.
And so today they have to meet more standards, higher standards, and so I think we have to build something for that area as good as we have in Old Town, as good as we have out there at 10 Princeton 180, 168. I'm in the wrong city. 168, something like that, something, and to maximize the use of that property, if that's the best place to have a station, because I think it's an opportunity to look around. Is it, based on your models, based on what you've done?
Absolutely. It's a very good location that gets us right on Shaw, gets us northbound on Minnewawa, and also takes us south to Ashland and then left on Ashland. So it does work very well for our response matrix.
If the state permits us to build something temporary at Train Center, I say we go, and I don't want a Taj Mahal, but I do want something, maybe we build the legacy or the legacy building out there. Not a Taj Mahal, but something that lasts for 40 years.
And our intention is to value optimize what we put into already into Station 6. I mean, it's down to what the faucet is. All that stuff takes the architect, the construction manager, facilities. So all those lists for the ice machine, everything is already built. So that's the, if there is a one positive side to it, all those things are high quality and all those have already been spec'd. So the expectation would be is that we could reduce some cost on the design and construction management side because we've already valued engineered to find the best products, reuse those same best products that we already have spec for Station 6, not redesign the entire station. We believe it'll fit with the change of how the office is located because Station 6 is on a corner, so we put the office location on the side on Encino. This one, we'd have to move it to the front again because on that location, the front off Minnewawa would be the access to the stations like it is today for the general public. We did that one because of the side parking that matches the park is why it's on the side there on that design. But that's a minimal design change according to the Taylor Group. CAD can move that, reconfigure it, and then off we go.
I would just say make sure that you're hearing us though, that we want something nice for the folks in Southwest. This is an opportunity for us to kind of communicate that we value that area, and fire stations, regardless of whether one likes this or not, fire stations can be a gathering place and a symbol of how much some city cares about the community that fire station serves. So it's probably just some facade touch-ups. It's all the box. I mean, Steve White used to tell us this all the time. I'll build the box and then let Dwight. He'll put all of the
And that's what I'm saying is I think what we chose for 6 isn't probably appropriate for there. Some other design to make it look like it, but the layout, all the mechanical pieces are already there in design. It's what do we want to do for the elevations, for the roll-up doors, and what's the roofing material, what's the exterior material is really up to planning and you as the city council for what that look is. The inside is what we've already worked on.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
And I have, it's right down the street from the largest 9/11 memorial west of Mississippi, so. And kind of to speak to your point, Bob, I have a picture of my great-grandfather, Andrew Bessinger, in front of a firehouse in Newark, New Jersey, on a horse-drawn steamer in 1870. And that is still a functioning firehouse. It looks pretty bad, but but it's still a functioning firehouse. Yeah, no, well, I don't know.
But even things that you see about like those stations didn't have rear entrance. I mean, like in the fire service, we can go thousands of miles forward. We can only seem to go about 12 miles in reverse without an accident. So, things that change in the fire service, we talk about just the needs of modernization is all those stations don't have rear entrances. So every time they're backing in, it's more likelihood that you're going to damage the equipment. And as a result, all of our fire stations now have pull-through, drive-through apparatuses. So no matter what we do, if you look at it 40, 50 years from now, heck, we could all be battery operated or a hovercraft is coming out. I have no idea. We might need a landing pad. At the rate technology is changing, who in the world knows what it'll be in another 40 or 50 years. But that's what you're seeing is just the, changes in the workplace, changes in who we hire, and change in technology of how we have to adapt and overcome and make it work.
This is receive and file. Any other questions for the chief? Thank you, Chief. Good
Thank you
presentation.
again. Sorry for ending on a kind of a downer note, but again, thank you for your support for the Clovis Fire Department. I greatly appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Now we come to a workshop for the Clovis City Council to conduct a workshop to discuss the impact on ongoing city operations during the COVID-19 state of emergency as declared by the federal government, state of California, county of Fresno, and city of Clovis, and to explore actions the city may take in response to the crisis. Luke Surpret. Luke.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. These are our usual graphs. I try to keep you updated on what is happening both in Clovis and Fresno County. This first graph is the number of new cases in the city of Clovis. It is a pretty good trend there, heading downward. Again, the last week is not for a complete week, so that number will go up just due to the reporting standards. But we are showing a positive trend, but we are still well above where we were back before Memorial Day. We've never gotten back down to that level again. This is the Fresno County number of new cases. This is important to us because the county, the tier we're assigned to and how much can be opened is based on county data, not on city by city case. So this is important. A significant drop, and I will touch on it a little bit later slide, but the past drop was significant enough to lower us into the tier 3, the red tier, which allowed some further reopening of businesses. But you can see the last week's data it's concerning because it's trending slightly upward. So we're watching that closely and keeping our fingers crossed. Could be a number of factors that are playing into that. The post-Labor Day gathering it takes a while before those cases start to show up, and also changes in the workforce entering the valley and moving throughout the valley for agricultural harvest. So there's a number of factors that are affecting us, but that's the Fresno County cases. This is the number of deaths in the city of Clovis. We had 2 in this last week, and this is the Fresno County numbers. Again, it's spiking up and down. It's lower, but it still pops up every now and then. So the next one, and this has some kind of very disturbing information on it if you look at it. This is the hospitalization graph, and you can see in the last week hospitalizations have climbed significantly. That's a bad sign. Hopefully, it is a temporary bump and it will drop back down, but we are watching that closely. Next slide, Andy. So this is the tier assignment. As I stated earlier, as of last Tuesday, Fresno County moved into the substantial tier, the red tier. Our numbers in the county were 6.2 cases, new cases per 100,000 population, and the positivity rate was 4.9. Couple of things are changing. The state has added a new, what they're calling the California Health Equity Metric. It becomes effective tomorrow, on tomorrow's release. And what this does is it basically ties the county's tier to the performance in the lowest quartile of census tracts according to the Healthy Places Index. And what they want to do is make sure that no area is left behind, that the county as a whole may be doing well, but if there are census tracts that are doing extremely poorly and they're in that lower quartile, that will limit whether you can go down to the next tier or get bumped back up. So we'll be looking forward to the new data tomorrow. We don't have, at this point at least, I don't have access to any COVID reporting by census tract, only county numbers as far as positivity rate. The state is compiling all that. We'll see what it's like tomorrow. If you look at the map, there's an interesting map on the Healthy Places Index website. It is staggering when you look at Fresno County map, how much of the county falls into the lower quartile. of the healthy places. Clovis is one of the areas that is more fortunate, and it all comes down to socioeconomic demographics, access to healthcare, insurance, things like that. But there's a number of factors that go into determining the rating per census tract. So we'll see how that affects the count tomorrow, as well as if we see the numbers starting to creep up. That's a concerning item too. And I think that's my last slide. And I'm available for any comments. That's the update. And we are continuing to work with our businesses. Andy, as soon as a change comes, Andy blasts out his email and just trying to keep everybody all informed as to what the status is. And it was good to give them some good news and say that some indoor restaurant operations could recommence last Tuesday. So that's my presentation. I'm available for any questions.
Jose?
So we're going to stay at red, but with this equity new standards, they may not permit us to go to orange.
It may not permit us to go to orange, and we're not sure yet. This is something brand new. We'll see if the equity, it could push us back, it could push us back into the purple category.
I don't have census, but there's cities that the average, based on population, there's some, the county is like 30%. We're like 1.6% here in Clovis, but there's some cities that are in the 7.2% of their population is suffering. And I mean, they're rural cities, and I mean, that's horrible. Twice as more infection than the rest of the county. And they're mostly rural cities, and so that would mean to me that until those cities are equal to us at 1.6%, we won't move, and we might go back up.
It's a possibility. We'll have to see how this new data gets applied, and what the new data is. Like I said, we have not seen any tracking based on census tract. Now, on one hand, though, if with such a large portion of the county being in that lower quartile, if the results are distributed equally, a very large portion of the results we're already getting is from that lower quartile, so there may not be a big shift compared to the county-wide number. But we'll just have to wait and see what the state comes out with tomorrow. So my understanding of the way the tier system works, so we can't go any lower. We have to stay at a tier for 2 weeks before you go any lower. But if the numbers were to come in tomorrow and show us in the widespread, I think we don't immediately go back to widespread. We basically, okay, we're on the watch list, and if the next week, if we're at those higher levels, we would go back to the purple tier. So I don't expect a change one way or another tomorrow, but when those numbers come out, it'll give us an idea of what's happening.
Lynn?
I think that's right, and I think the message in every call I'm on is sort of how do we stay in the red? Like, that's got to be the collective, because I frankly don't think if we go back to purple, I'm pretty sure no one's going to shut their doors again, and so that doesn't even seem practical to me. But I do think, shop safe, shop local, some way to just stay in the red, because as the county goes, we all go. So every call I'm on is about how do you stay in the red. So whatever we can do, I know social media has its downsides, but that's really to lift the county up, that seems like our best option. And then I'm not sure what the state will do if people go back to purple and then no one follows those rules. That seems like a different scenario, but it's possible. So anyway, I want to encourage whatever we can do in the affirmative to make Clovis the safest place to shop or eat or dine or walk around or whatever you're going to do. But that really needs to be the message so that we can get people out, but stay in the red.
But I think it's more than that, because it's like we have to help Huron and Parlier and Orange Cove and Selma, because they're keeping us at the level we're at. If those are the communities we have to encourage, because we're there, but what the governor's saying, you might be there, but so what? Those other communities have to reach equity,
there's a lot of effort in those communities for farm workers, and so there's a lot of work, but, so yes, and we gotta stay where we are, we can't go, oh, we got it, we're good. I mean, we gotta do our part to stay in the red as well, because it's the collective. So I think it's both and, but most of the work in the county is aimed at those communities, of course, because their numbers are so tough.
Any idea where this came from? Did this come out of left field, or did we have an idea that? I get that, the political portion of it, but did we have any inkling that they were gonna they were gonna just now add 20 yards to the football field on us?
We did not. I don't know, I can't speak for the county health department. They're in closer contact, but this was, from what I can tell, it was somewhat surprising to all involved. I think we knew that there was a strong concern for the inequitable outcomes, but I think this is just a way. There's also some other provisions that require some additional testing and outreach and investment in some of the communities that are struggling the most. And I think this was Sacramento's way of just making sure that that everybody pulls together with the most disadvantaged communities in their county to try to help everybody together.
I don't think hospitals were aware. I mean, in all the calls I was like, what? But yeah, it's like, if they could just leave the rules alone, it would be really good. Just leave the rules, we'll get there, but you can't, so that has been hard, but we were.
Fine.
Luke, on this equity thing, there's nothing racial involved, right? Where we have to improve Latino numbers, Southeast. So, but you just mentioned census tracts.
Well, the Healthy Places Index, while I don't think it directly includes racial, but it measures socioeconomic levels, and it rates everything from average educational attainment, home ownership, health insurance, drinking water quality, which hurts a lot of our smaller disadvantaged communities around the county, air quality, access to transit, access to libraries, access to parks, how many people commute by bicycle. It's a whole bunch of factors, and some of them seem to make sense. Some of them are kind of, I'll leave it to the experts to decide it. But so there isn't a direct racial component, but it is largely a socioeconomic measure. And as we know, there are racial disparities in economic outcomes. So so that is an issue.
Okay. So in other words, yeah, I haven't. That's why I'm trying to understand. So all of those have to go down, in other words, for you're talking from those communities.
Well, so what it does is the Healthy Places rate, each census tract gives it an index number based on all these factors, however they're rated. And then any census tract that is in the bottom 25% of all census tracts statewide falls under this area that kind of becomes a threshold, that those have to meet the standard as well as everybody else. And if you look in Clovis, the city of Clovis, I think we have one census tract that might be in the bottom quartile, but we also have 4 or 5 that are in the top quartile, and everything's in between. If you look countywide, there is a staggering number that are in that bottom quartile, the bottom 25%. So the goal is to make sure that their results are, they're achieving the same results as the more affluent areas of the county.
If their website worked, I would tell you what it says, because on their website they have a banner that says, check out our new COVID-19 related indicators to support equitable response efforts. However, that doesn't work. The link doesn't work, so I can't tell you what it says. But yeah.
Questions on first of all, I wanted to thank Supervisors Brandon and Pacheco for pushing for the sort of smaller communities, the $3 million to the smaller communities, and I think we got 612,000. Can you report a little bit on what those are used for us internally, or was that will be another time?
So, I previously reported the expenditures we had made to date that qualified for the CARES Act funding we got from the state. That included, and I don't remember the exact numbers, but we went through and looked at, it was 18% of our medical aid calls, it was 5% or 3% of our police department calls, it was the bipolar needlepoint ionization systems. There were a number of those, and those all added up to well over what we got from the state plus the county. So it's a reimbursement base from the county. So finance department submitted the request for reimbursement with those numbers, showing that we had already basically, you know, spent that money on COVID-related fire calls, COVID-related police calls, and will be reimbursed from the county for that money, and it goes into the general fund. So that's where that money's going right now.
So the 612 is accounted for already?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we were probably at 2.5 to 3 million of total costs. We got 1.4 million of the state CARES money that they passed down to us, and this 612,000 from the county, we're still probably, you know, having probably close to $1 million in COVID expenditures above and beyond both of those combined.
Okay. Well, I know that I was hoping that because it's new dollars, that maybe we can carve out a couple thousand to do like a food drive for the community, working with the Salvation Army in town, because I think we haven't done anything just for the community at large, but if it's already accounted for, then it's something.
So we have done, out of the CARES Act, we haven't, out of the CARES dollars, we haven't. There's limits as to what those can be spent on. I'd have to look and see what category that would fall into. Out of the CDBG money, we have spent significantly not only on the senior meals program, but also just on community-wide rental and homeowners assistance. And I believe in a week or two, we'll be coming back with another report on some additional CARES money and what we're going to be doing with that. So the reality of it is, if council recall, when we first gave our first estimate as to what the economic impacts of the city were going to be, we were looking at, with all of the reductions, it was going to be a $10 million impact to our revenue. We made $8 million in reductions, and we're going to have to dip into reserves for $2 million. So with the CARES Act combination that we got from the state plus the county, we're at the point of maybe not having to dip into the reserves. But if I spend that money on anything else, then I have to really take that out of reserves. And the way I was prioritizing, and we still have time to change this, and after we get our sales tax information in November, we're going to come back to council with an update. But kind of our first priority was to try to protect our reserves and keep us whole, while still doing as much as we could with the CDBG funds and everything. But when we come back, if there's council direction to spend that money elsewhere, we certainly could do that.
Yeah, I just wanted to see what the other council members felt as well. I know that we have a lot of internal costs, but at the same time, something on behalf of the council, the city, to do something public in which we all volunteer and do something, I think is also a good gesture for the community, especially for working with the Salvation Army, who does monthly or bi-monthly distributions, who is also, you know, a member of the staff, something like that. I think is good, but I also see the need internally, but it just seems like we have not done anything, and so I don't know if we have support here to do something like that. If we do, great. If not, I don't think it's a lot. Maybe 5,000, 10,000 feeds a lot of families, and so it's not like we're taking 100,000 out, and so that, because those types of community efforts aren't very expensive. That's all.
Jose?
I found the page. It's a blueprint for a safer economy, COVID-19, and equity. It has been clearly documented that certain communities, low income, Black, Latino, Pacific Islander, and essential workers have been disproportionately impacted by COVID-19 in terms of higher rates of infection, hospitalizations, and death. This disparity creates a public health imperative to address exposures in all communities, including especially those disproportionately impacted, as a measure to protect all communities. So it is trying to impact those communities. In California, the Latino population has succumbed to this virus much more than any other population. In Fresno, 50% of those that have died from COVID have been Latino, and so that's why they're trying to do that. And they come from these rural communities.
Maybe in a future workshop, we can talk about ways that Clovis can be a good neighbor to maybe the other cities. It might be small financial things. It could be maybe staff helping staff with some logistical things, and maybe, you know, helping them walk through maybe some grant writing and things like that. One of the things that I remember when I was stationed in Europe in the 70s, 1977, the Americans were going to bring in the neutron bomb, and which was a friendlier type of tactical weapon. It didn't destroy things, it just killed people. And the Germans were not real thrilled about that. And there was a lot of anti-American sentiment in the press, in magazines, things like that. And I recall a letter to the editor in a Newsweek magazine that was published in Belgium, where a person talked about, in 1946, the only food I remember came from a green can that said United States Army. And a lot of soldiers then were really doing badly, because every month the mark went up, the dollar went down, their rent went up, and they were suffering. And at Christmas time, German families brought them care packages. And they said, this is to help you out because we were starving and you guys kept us alive. So maybe there's something where we can reach down. Maybe we pick a city to be our neighbor, like, well, Sanger. I mean, they're our nearest one. They've suffered, so has Selma. You know, I've been the chief in Fowler and in Kingsburg and in Parlier. Yeah. So maybe there's something we can do that, you know, that we're not going to spend a lot of money doing it, but when it happens, the people in Orange Cove say, hey, did you see what Clovis did for us? And I think that could be something that could be that for a future workshop. But anyway.
That's a great idea. It could also be a great COG project. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think we used to say, like, I don't want a sister city in Japan when Huron is struggling so much. Wow. And so we used to talk about, like, could you have like a civic swap meet almost? You know, we would say what we discarded here in Clovis was far better than many cities would ever require. So COG might be the forum to adopt, not that I don't want sister city, but I mean, like, we got people around us struggling. Now they're struggling with new metrics. So that might be an interesting agenda for COG, that we could adopt each other or help cities, because I mean, I do think that's been a huge gap for many years. The COG might be a place to rally some of that potentially.
I'll bring that up there. Anything else for the workshop? Okay, now we're coming to council comments. Bob, any pictures, Bob?
I don't know. Do I have any pictures? Oh, I do. Good. I sent it to John. So this is really kind of reporting out. So I really want to tell you, when I was out of town and this event occurred, it was great to see how you all responded to what happened. And the only thing I could think of to do in solidarity with what you were doing was to put a GoFundMe account up. And I only seeded it with like $100. I was expecting to put in like $1,000, you know. So anyway, with $100 and your efforts, rallying not just the community but also the media, and then the media choosing to retweet, or at least I think with our PR folks here, making sure that the GoFundMe location was within the article somewhere. This got shared all over the place, and I didn't know what to put down as a goal, and so I put 5,000 down, and we're close to 30,000. And so I've worked with Chanel a little bit, a couple of times, just to make sure that she was the designated beneficiary. I've never done a GoFundMe account. Yeah. So, but she has been able to access these funds, and she's very excited to, not only, restore her business and get it back to where it is. I mean, you need to know people have been volunteering their services for her. Not only some of the things that you saw today earlier in this meeting, but the flooring, the painting, all of that stuff has just been people coming up to her say, I just really hate that this happened to you. And she is really looking forward to figuring out a way to give back to the community. And so when she talks about a block party, she is like serious about how she can make that happen. So I think that maybe at some point, maybe Sean or somebody can be directed to coordinate with her on that. But because my name was tied to this thing, I really felt like I needed to be as transparent as possible as to what was being done with this money. So this is my way of being transparent and saying that's how much was raised. She's now has access to the funds. I don't have anything to do with it. I'm a little worried about what my reporting requirements might be as I started thinking about that after the fact. So I'm going to talk to David. I'm going to talk to David about it at some point to figure out, all right, so what does that look like for me? So anyway, that's my reporting out. Thank you.
Lynn?
Got an email on the neighborhood where Corporal Kirk was here a couple weeks ago when we put the lien on the property and all of that. So maybe we could have an update on where we are in sort of accelerating our ability to put liens on properties. But I got another note. Did you all get this email? From one of the neighbors who, and I guess I'll leave it for the city manager, but basically he's saying that now they're doing motorcycle racing on these streets, 15 separate passes. He's asking for a traffic patrol, and he wrote this to Corporal Kirk. So I think what I just want to say is I think I'm afraid for this neighborhood. I mean, 6 years of just sheer torment. I feel like there's got to be something more. Mr. District Attorney, no. But I mean, there needs to be something more in our ordinances and our regulations and I don't know how to help this neighborhood, but 6 years of this, I was actually afraid when the paper wrote the story and all of our names were in it. I was afraid. I mean, I don't know why I felt that way, but I just think that there's something that's not going to end well in this neighborhood. I mean, 6 years of living in a neighborhood where you don't get to enjoy this Clovis way of life that we've all celebrated here today. I just can't believe we need to find some way to help these neighbors. And I don't think traffic tickets, because he said it's gotten worse since he got their last ticket on September 23rd for no registration tags. So obviously, whatever we're doing now is just making it worse. So I'm afraid for this neighborhood, and I wondered if we could just take a look. And I know Corporal Kirk's done an awesome job, but I think we've crossed a sort of none of us, I wouldn't put up with this for 6 years. I mean, I don't know what I would do, but I just feel like we need to do something more than our ordinances currently allow. So I guess I would just work with the chief, see what we can do, see if we can help these folks. But I am worried about this neighborhood. So I just wanted to bring that and put that in the public record. I'll give this to you, Luke, if you want to have a copy of it.
Bond. Wanted to report out on September 29th, Andy and I joined in the Housing Community Economic Development Committee. We had a final meeting to go over a position on Prop 19, and that sort of changed Prop 13 stuff. We voted no, but yes was the overwhelming position. So the committee has taken the position to support Prop 19, and that'll go to the executive, and we'll see where they stand there. And I wanted to thank Andy for being sort of a resource throughout this past year of all these housing legislation and discussions that has come forward. And I think having someone with a deeper understanding and expertise in looking at the legislation, having a lot of history and knowledge of it was very helpful to me. So Luke, thank you for allowing Andy to participate as someone in those meetings, which the committee has allowed. So thank you, Andy, for all your work. I also wanted to thank John and Luke for getting those 14 certificates for the Eagle Scouts Troop 19. And so it's kind of interesting because I think the LDS all left scouting, Latter-day Saints. And so that was sort of the end of that. Yes. And so because of the positions in which the scouting took, contrary to sort of their beliefs. And so that's a huge loss for Boy Scouting in general. But that troop was, and I just found out about them last year, was predominantly a Hmong troop. And so they've had, since the time that they've started, over 43 Eagle Scouts. And so, this last time there was one young Latino gentleman with the 13 Hmong guys who got the Eagle Scouts. But just that was a Clovis troop, and the Church of Latter-day Saints there on Gettysburg has been a sponsor. But it's no more, and so there's no more scouting for them, but we helped them to the end, so thank you for that. And next week I will be out. I will not be here at the meeting, so I just wanted to put that, notice that.
Thank you, Bong. Who's it? Bong? Jose?
Anybody.
Yeah.
You know, I need to report out because I did, and thank you for bringing that up, Vaughn, because I forgot to mention to the crew that, I don't know if I still have to report out because there was really no expenditure, maybe a registration fee to go on Zoom for the Public Safety Committee meeting. So you've got the resolution headed your way for the annual conference.
Right.
That addresses the issue of policing the internet. And so it's been in front of two committees. Both committees have said they want to approve the resolution, which says, you know, basically turn the screws a little bit on internet companies as far as policing is concerned. But both of the votes were really close. In the Public Safety Committee, I think it was like, I don't know, 19 to 17
or something like that.
Yeah, and the other one was just like one vote difference. So it's going to be kind of a long, torturous, I think, business session for those who are the voting delegates. So thanks for listening.
I handed out the challenge coin I gave to the young girl tonight. I happened to see the Pledge of Allegiance coin, and I thought that would be a nice public presentation this way we can encourage Eagle Scouts and young people to come to our meetings. And I thought also of maybe incorporating one side with the City of Clovis somehow, so that as council members, we could buy the coins for handing out for whatever purposes we have, and for city purposes, we can hand those out. I'm just putting food for thought in now. If we bought like 1,000 of them, I think they come out to like $6.95 a piece or something like that.
This side would be our own logo, and on the back we just like it.
Correct. Some variation thereof. And I thought it would be I think it's a nice congratulatory thing. There's any number of things that I go to. There's a change of command for the Army National Guard unit. I don't know if you guys have met Colonel Hall before. He's going to D.C. And they in fact, I think they were with the president 3 weeks ago. I think they got air medals for what they did for the fire relief. So that would be a situation where I would present something like that, or any of us could. So I'm just throwing that in for food for thought for a later conversation. And I think that's all I have, and we're going to be going to closed session. Do we have anything to report out?
No, but I need to make an oral announcement since we didn't place the facts on the agenda. The basis for the closed session is a threat of litigation under the California Voting Rights Act contained in the letter we received on September 18th, 2020. There will be nothing to report out, but if anybody wants to comment before we go into closed session, now would be the time.
I see no comments.
I mean, anybody from the public, so I don't think we have anybody, so we're gonna.
There's no one online.
And we got nothing via the internet?
No.
Okay. We will go to closed session. Thank you. We're adjourned.